My name is Dimi Mortis. I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather and meet today, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. Throughout this video essay, I will be discussing a highly controversial topic, that is Australia Day. So what is Australia Day? Or better yet, what do we think of when we hear the words Australia Day? Contemporarily speaking, it encompasses a celebration of country through participating in actions such as having a family barbecue, hanging out with friends, soaking up the sunshine at the beach and relaxing back, listening to the hottest music hits of the year, sipping on a cold beverage. Contrastingly, Australia Day takes on a different meaning for Indigenous people. The 26th of January marks an occasion that does not cause celebration in the least. This is due to it symbolising the beginning of great suffering for First Nation peoples. On this date in 1788, white settlement disrupted Indigenous culture by enabling the dispossession of Aboriginal lands. The invasion and colonisation of land by British settlers resulted in acts of severity such as brutal massacres, genocide, assimilation and protection policies, and stolen human rights. Such was done in a way to purposefully break down the resistance demonstrated by Australia's first peoples. Outcomes of such radical and historical behaviour formed instances of racism and oppression. Hence why Australia Day is commonly referred to as a day of mourning, survival day, and/or invasion day for Indigenous peoples. Throughout the change the date debate, it is clear that in Australia, our National Day is endorsed by many as a time to reflect on the nation's achievements and all the things that make us proud to be Australian, such as the multicultural and diverse country we are today. Many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australians wish to celebrate Australian freedoms and values that are enjoyed. However, they do not feel as though January 26 is an appropriate or ideal date to do so, simply because the history that underpins this date is too painful and traumatic. To begin to understand this relevant argument is to investigate such from Indigenous perspectives. I discovered a short film that reflects similar positions and attitudes revolving around Australia Day. This assisted in my personal understanding of the significance and meaning behind the date January 26 and that we should change it to include the First Nations of this country. With that being said, I would like to show a little snippet of this video in order to help you gain some insight as well.
It's celebrating rape, it's celebrating murders.
I celebrate so many things about being here, about how beautiful this country is, but at the same time, there's a dark and disconnected culture.
I think that our country is a great country and it's beautiful and there are a lot of opportunities here. I feel that celebrating Australia Day on the 26th of January is wrong. That doesn't make any sense.
The 1st of January 1901 was when the states federated to become a country. It was loosely called Australia before then. It became official. This was now the nation called Australia, the Commonwealth of Australia. That should be Australia Day.
If it's truly a celebration of what we are as a nation, then we need to include the First Nations of this country.
A day that we could all celebrate.
I'll help.
It is clear we have come a long way as a country in our attempts to dismantle the prejudice and injustices that occurred before our times. This is evident as specific policies such as the Racial Discrimination Act 1975 implement a recognition of civil rights for First Nations people. However, I have also demonstrated throughout this video how a significant barrier amongst Australians and Indigenous Australian peoples' ongoing struggle for the recognition of their rights is in fact Australia Day date. Despite the social and political changes that have been instilled, Indigenous activists are still till this day fighting for their rights and that of their ancestors. Furthermore, individuals should not have guilt for celebrating their nation, but rather be mindful of the date in which Australia Day falls on and its meaning for Aboriginal people. It is significant to be aware of the impact colonialism still has on Indigenous peoples and communities. An example that highlights such is intergenerational trauma. The following short video clip by the Healing Foundation is to highlight intergenerational trauma as a contemporary issue that has come about due to Australia's history and what happened on a date we now call Australia Day. I found it extremely helpful in terms of understanding the negative impacts on Indigenous individuals and their communities.
And healed us in times of hurt.
But since the trauma of colonisation and the stolen generations, we have not been able to heal in the same way. And we have unknowingly passed this trauma on to our children through sharing our sad stories and having them witness and experience our pain. This is known as intergenerational trauma, and we see symptoms today in broken relationships, disconnected families, violence, suicide, and drug and alcohol abuse.
But this is not where our story ends. We still have strong minds and hearts, and we still know who we were and where we belong. By creating safe and strong communities together, supporting our families to be free from pain, returning to our culture and building a strength of identity, we can stop the cycle of trauma and bring about positive intergenerational change.
So what does this mean for us as social workers? Indeed, there is a continuing impact that colonisation has on Indigenous Australians. We have an opportunity as social workers to heal the past, but there is work that needs to be done presently within social work practice to instill reconciliation within an Australian context and put our best efforts forward as social service workers. As quoted by Taskin and Ife, 2019, profound thinking needs to be incorporated into social work practice as it encompasses a significant examination of the prescribed self. It is a form of decolonisation that involves more than just thinking purposefully, but rather requires one to view our potential epistemological, violent actions and silences which impact on the other. This is important in social work practice with clients that identify as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander. Through this style of practice, indigenisation becomes not just an idea motivated by social justice, but imperative if we are concerned for the future of humanity and diversity of Australia. Conclusively, Australia's history didn't begin in 1788, but it definitely goes on well beyond that. And there's a lot to recognise and celebrate about Australia, but also there's a lot in our history that's very dark that we need to expose ourselves to ensure that these sort of atrocities never happen again. We can find a better, more inclusive and unifying date than 26th of January, a date that involves the first peoples of this country in a way that can be acclaimed. Thank you.